what's going to happen.
Okay, I believe everyone. We are streaming. I'm going to my Facebook page to check, my YouTube page to check. Because the last time I did that, it took twice to get it to start streaming.
Couldn't be much more. Oh, good grief. The roommate has been... Sorry.
It's not showing it.
Because there wasn't so much space. There's only so much space in this house because she won't declutter. I was sorting my laundry on the bed.
It's not streaming.
Hold on.
I already hit start.
Oh, please don't start. Oh, wait.
Okay. We are live.
Okay, then I'm not going to do that.
I can stop it if you want.
No.
Nope.
All
Hi.
right.
This is our first time trying this, so please bear with us.
Alanis, do you have the sound? Go check on your channel.
1 second.
Please bear with us.
Alanis, do you have the sound?
I do.
All right, I'm going to start recording on my end. And 3, 2, 1. I hope you're not hearing the fan over here. We're live. We're recording.
Welcome back.
This is the first episode of the Dwindling and Unbelief podcast, where we'll look at religious, Mormon, and political issues with 2 ex-Mormons.
And a Mormon virgin.
A lot of Mormons are virgin until they get married.
I'm not that kind of virgin. I have a kid. I'm just a Mormon virgin.
There are all kinds of different virgins. Ask Rocky Horror Picture Show.
With that being said, today we're going to go over the church's policy on not letting blacks hold the priesthood, because as Trey Parker and Matt Stone informed us in the song I Believe, because I believe that God changed his mind about black people in 1978 for some reason.
I was reading that in the links you gave me. All these fun links. I read through them all. And one of the things I really liked is you had brought up the church of the... You had sent me the church's official position.
Yeah.
Race and the priesthood.
Which is basically a bunch of covering their own ass bullshit.
And they talk about how progressive Smith was.
Oh,
and
yeah.
In some ways he sort of was, but they then don't mention that he also wrote in the Pearl book that it was Shem and Ham and Cain are the black people's ancestors.
Yes, and here's the thing that I couldn't find a link to, but at least I was taught. It was in the book my dad had that none of us could find, called The Church and the Negro by John D. Lund from Deseret Publications, no longer in print for obvious reasons, that said basically non-white skin color is a curse from God because you were a fence sitter on the war in heaven.
Mm-hmm. I was taught that too. There's kind of an allusion to it in the Pearl of Great Price. I don't remember if it was in the Book of Abraham or the Book of Moses, but they say that in the Great War in Heaven that there were noble and great ones. And so it implies that there was a hierarchy based in the premortal existence based on your past actions, and that is often used to victim blame and also be used in other ways to basically said, well, you're going through this now because you obviously did something bad in the premortal existence. Or you weren't faithful enough in the premortal existence.
Now the Lord has shown unto me, Abraham, the intelligence that were organized, intelligence meaning people, were organized before the world was created, added.
Hold on just a second there. No, intelligence are what you were before you were a spirit.
Oh, okay. Well, there's a parentheses. I thought that meant people. It said people after it.
Yeah, they will become people, but they're not spirits yet.
Okay.
Because
this is one of those things that Telltale talks about, how using language on the inside that people on the outside would think means something totally different.
Yeah.
Well, keep in mind that spirits are produced by our Heavenly Father and Mother.
Yes.
In the natural way.
In the natural way.
So they have heaven sex. Okay. And there were many of these noble and great ones. And this was in Abraham.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was referencing. The noble and great ones usually refers to people like the prophets and like the general authorities, like the top tier people.
It's
Is usually what that.
144,000.
No, I don't
No,
think
the church doesn't really have that
do
concept.
the 144,000.
Oh, is that Mormon?
That's Jehovah's
That's
Witnesses.
not Mormon. That's Jehovah's Witness. But
I mixed them up.
But the idea basically is there was a hierarchy, and basically white people got blessed because they did more courageous and did better things in the premortal existence, and black people are cursed because they basically said we're sitting this one out, which is terrible, terrible, terrible doctrine.
Why is Sweden not full of black people?
For the same reason
Sweden doesn't exist.
Sweden doesn't exist.
But it's not just black people, because the Book of Mormon curses Laman and Lemuel.
Yeah, curses, yeah. And that's a whole nother can of worms. Because basically, if you read the Book of Mormon and you read every time they talk about how the Native Americans were unrighteous, you see a theme, and basically at the end of it, they say Christopher Columbus and other white European explorers came and took over the land because the Native Americans were unrighteous and they deserved what they got.
But keep in mind, the atheist tea girl is a Gentile, and she may not know all this.
This is why I'm explaining it.
Says
someone
who is clearly not Jewish. So
yes.
the Native Americans deserved what they got.
Yeah,
they were
because they were cursed and lazy and iniquitous. They basically, to put it kind of crudely, the people of color had it coming.
They were the fun people in the first book of the Book of Mormon.
The one teaching, and I've seen this at the in like a Baptist church too, that I've seen it taught that black people were a descendant of Cain. Mm-hmm. Which I never understood, because between Cain and Noah, between Cain and us was Noah, where there was a bottleneck, where there wouldn't be descendants of Cain anymore.
that also, and also another weird thing is on the Cain thing, is there is, and it's not official doctrine, it's just like a rumor from a book. It says that Cain is Bigfoot, and I've
heard that one.
So you think that Bigfoot had children? Like,
no, it's still just Cain. He floated for a year during a flood, and it took him about 20 years to dry out, and then he moved to North America.
Anyway, before we start this discussion of the Mormon Church and racism, there is someone we should mention that is important to this discussion, and his name was Elijah Abel.
I read about him.
I'm trying to remember who Elijah Abel was.
Elijah Abel was the first black in the Mormon Church to hold a priesthood.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah.
And he was ordained by Joseph Smith. I did read in the sources I linked to these people, which hopefully Alanis...
I read all of them.
Down below.
I did. It's just not everything processed. The thing is, with Joseph Smith and the Elijah Abel... having been given the priesthood, Joseph Smith would say something early on in the process and then completely backtrack on that later.
As the religion... Sorry, go ahead.
So, pretty much Joseph Smith was like, hey, well, we're going to allow we're going to allow Elijah to get the priesthood. And then, didn't he backtrack that, or was it Brigham Young that went behind him?
Well, Elijah never lost it, because once it's granted, as long as he's a member of the church, it can't be taken away.
It was challenged after Brigham Young took over, but he still kept it.
Yeah. Okay.
He was denied temple recommends.
Is that where he gets buried, inside the bottom of the temple?
No. There are certain rituals that are considered required in order for you to gain the highest amount of rewards in heaven. And 2 of them are temple rituals that you cannot get anywhere else.
Isn't one of them getting married?
Yep.
Getting married, yes. Getting sealed, as they call it, which is why Battlestar Galactica calls that. For those who didn't know that Battlestar Galactica was originally written by 2 Mormons.
And the endowment ceremonies, which I can only talk about from information from other people because I did not actually go through those myself.
You weren't well endowed.
No, actually, I am part of the Itty Bitty Titty Committee. So
no, endowed down there. Isn't it only men who can do it?
No, actually, I did need a man in order to, but the thing is that women are not kept from doing endowment ceremonies unless they're not getting married or they don't go on a mission to try to earn points for a better husband, which I did neither.
Do they
men go on missions because they have to. Women go on missions because they didn't catch a man fast enough.
Well, but you're talking about going on missions and get points. I'm thinking back when I was in high school, and they used to send me these magazines and said, "Hey, you can sign up and you can go sell this stuff and you'll get points, and you can turn these points in for a bike or a."
Pretty similar concept as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, Mormonism is kind of like a pyramid scheme as far as the afterlife goes.
Yeah, it is.
You get your children.
That's why you see so many Mormon housewives doing MLM schemes.
My favorite was when the bishops had to tell the Mormon housewives to stop having sex toy parties.
I didn't hear about that, but I'm not surprised. Oh, but we're kind of getting on a tangent here.
Yeah, we should have brought X on for that one.
Getting on a tangent here.
I could imagine.
But something that I do want to bring up is we talk about blacks not getting the priesthood. The thing is that people, obviously, especially people who know Mormons, think, oh, well, they can't go to the temple. Well, if you don't have the priesthood, there's other things that you cannot participate in that make you feel lesser as somebody who is in the church. For example, you have to have the priesthood in order to bless and pass the sacrament. And this isn't done in front of the entire church.
The sacrament being
everybody knows.
Hold on.
The sacrament
is for those who aren't Mormon, this may take some explaining. It's basically communion in every other church.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
We have wine, we have water.
Yeah. But you can't pass that out and everybody sees you unable to pass out the sacrament and something is obviously thought to be wrong with you.
But what if you just hate wearing ties?
Wasn't the sacrament...
That's a sin.
Isn't the sacrament
I hated wearing ties.
Isn't the sacrament done in the temples?
No, it's every week. It's every week. The difference between the temples and Sunday worship services is Sunday worship services are open to everybody. The public can come and see. You are invited to go to church. And the temple is considered sacred stuff that's only for Mormons. It's only for Mormon participation. And only if you're a worthy Mormon. If you are not worthy, you don't get to go.
And that's where you got to wear your special underwear.
Yeah.
That's where you take out the special underwear.
Yeah.
As far as Mormonism goes, been there, done that, didn't get the funny underwear.
You didn't have the funny underwear?
Nope, me neither.
I'm going to start selling t-shirts that say that.
That is a different, and again, that's another tangent for another time.
Okay, we'll have to talk about that because I thought I was signing up with Royal Mormons. Y'all are ones who didn't even have the underwear, so why should I be listening to y'all?
Hey, I had the priesthood.
I
had the requirements to have the priesthood.
Bite me, Alanis.
I had it since I was 12.
But basically, if you are a man and you don't hold the priesthood, you are cut out from doing not just temple stuff, but other things that are considered basic, everyday, like, ritual part of life that you're basically not allowed to do. You can't do baby blessings, which is a huge deal in the church. It's basically, I think Catholics have something similar, where they name the baby.
A christening, I believe it's what it's called.
In front of the entire congregation. You can't even be in that group that blesses and names your child if you don't have the priesthood.
Yay! Y'all have a lot of fun rules. Not y'all, but Mormons.
Yeah, and like this, the thing is that everybody shoots towards the temple ceremony, which yes, it is a big deal. But basically, blacks were cut out from at least a third to half of the things that they could do as a member of the church, because there are certain rituals and things you are not allowed to do unless you are a holder of the priesthood. You cannot lead, you cannot hold certain positions in the church. Basically, it was like, we want your butt in a seat and we want your money, but you cannot participate in everyday parts of being a Mormon.
But Elijah Abel was only not allowed to have a temple recommended. He couldn't go to the temple. And if you actually did get a chance to glance into John D. Lund's book, the reasoning was the time was not right. Now, the church today, it's like I sent you both a link from the church official website.
I saw that.
Yeah.
1978 was the right time.
Yeah, they really do whitewash it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, of course, they're white people.
But it was only... But in Mormonism, for those who don't know, it's like you always get a second chance unless you blaspheme against the Holy Ghost, or it's a bit complicated.
Yeah, it's that again is another deep discussion for another time.
So that one exists in Christianity as well. In Baptist Christianity.
Even in John D. Lund's horrible book, he said the blacks could still go to the celestial kingdom and have their harem and keep their wives eternally pregnant, which does not sound like heaven to me. But
that is one of the being eternally pregnant.
That also changed too, because Brigham Young said something to the effect of Negroes can make it to heaven; they'll just be there as servants for white people.
That's terrible.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. Like, the church has tried to make their history sound a lot better than it was. They're like, oh, we just, prevented them from going to the temple for X amount of time. It's like, no, it was more horrible than that.
I mean, imagine if you're Mormon and you have a slave and you're trying to get your slave into your religion. Hey, here's the Bible, read it. Why? So you can live forever. Oh, cool. What will I do after that? Oh, you'll be my servant.
But
why do I want to read this?
Yeah. And going back to something Triateo said earlier, she is right. Joseph Smith did change a lot of things as his theology progressed. But a lot of those things were either the religion was changing or more often he got caught.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's one of my... And also another discussion. But if you want to look it up sometime, it's a really long chapter in the Doctrine and Covenants. And it's my favorite scripture in any religion. D&C 132.
Oh, that's 2.5 right there.
Song of Solomon 8:8.
Well, this was right after Joseph Smith got caught with Fanny Algiers.
So, wait, is that the donkey one, Alanis?
No.
Okay.
Song of Solomon 8:8 is, whatever shall we do with our sisters who have no breasts? Who will stand up and speak for her at time of marriage?
Well, the Song of Solomon is erotic poetry.
Yeah. It all does talk about the woman who wanted who lusted after a lover hung like a donkey and ejaculates a lot.
What?
Yeah.
All right. I'm not a cis woman, but what cis woman really cares about the guys? All right, that's not on topic, but it's just like...
But like I said, it's from the get-go, like it basically started out as, hey, we're going to try to be a little bit progressive, and then for a split second, and they're like, no, we're not.
Well,
basically what it boiled down to.
A lot of Mormon history is better understood, especially the early Mormon history, which is really weird, with these two ideas. Joseph Smith was horny, and Brigham Young was a racist.
He was worse. He was more than a racist. He was a bloodthirsty racist.
And a war criminal and
all kinds of other things. Brigham Young was an extremely violent man who loved his violence. So.
Well, as ContraPoints pointed out in one of her videos, violence is fun.
It can be.
It is, but the way Brigham used it was, if he were alive today, he would have been tried for war crimes. No doubt about it.
That already have been one of Trump's cabinet picks, right?
Probably. Except that Brigham Young hated the U.S. government.
Oh, okay. Oh, so he would have been a McVeigh kind of person.
Yeah.
No, he'd be like those militiamen who went to the Oregon Nature Preserve and took it over.
Oh, okay.
I'm also trying to remember, there was a woman who was told by Joseph Smith that he would adopt her as a daughter in the celestial kingdom. And she didn't understand what he meant. And so she declined. And then after Joseph Smith died, she had finally understood what he meant and asked the current prophet of the church at that time to seal her to Joseph Smith because he had made that promise to her. And they sealed her as a servant, not as a daughter like she was promised.
That's like some freaking genie shit.
Well,
like, I wish for this, and yeah, we'll give you your wish, but slightly changed to make it worse.
Yeah.
Like, I wish to be beautiful forever. Okay, we turn you into a mannequin. What?
Yeah. Yeah. That I don't remember her name, but that was also a big one. They didn't correct that until it's been the past 5 years. Like, there was actual documentation.
Okay.
This conversation happened, that she was actually supposed to be sealed as a family member, and she was sealed as a slave instead. And they just now, about 5 years ago, actually corrected that.
Okay, I've got to ask a question. So right now, 5 years ago in heaven, 5 years ago in heaven, where they like at one point this girl was washing the floors, and all of a sudden they're like, "Girl, you don't need to be washing the floors anymore. You're part of the family."
It was.
And how did the other parts of people of the family feel like? That would be awkward. The next meal, you're like, can you get me the? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, you don't give me stuff anymore.
It was probably just an oversight that they noticed this right after they noticed it's like, hey, we need to change our mind about the families of gay children, or families of gay parents.
Oh, we can. That's an entire podcast we can do.
Yes, that is on its own, but it was just.
That's one of the problems with talking about Mormonism, is it's extremely hard to talk about one thing without having to go and explain 5 other things to have that one thing make sense.
Well,
Hi, Critical Cripple.
One thing I had is I found when I was reading the Race and the Priesthood is that I'm reading through and then getting towards the end where they're talking about it getting changed so that black people can get in. And it read a lot like a comic book recon. Like, you know, they decided someone's a good character now, so they go back and say, well, he's really a good character the whole time, but Professor X told him to go pretend to be bad till just now, and now he's good. Well, you know, the blacks were really part of us the whole time. It had to be revealed at a certain time so we could beat Magneto with it.
No, the whole thing was they needed to wait for Abel to have children. Because Cain was punished because he killed Abel, and Abel had children in the afterlife, which coincided with the church having its tax-exempt status threatened, according to one of the sources, which I think is wrong, because I think it was actually the NCAA had a couple teams that were threatening not to play basketball with BYU. because
I've heard that those two rumors, and I also heard the rumor that as they were expanding in places like Brazil, where it was impossible to tell people's lineage, like they were like, "Oh no, we can't give Black people the priesthood on accident." Because basically, as far as Mormonism is concerned, one drop of Black blood means that you are Black, even 1 little percent. And at least at that time, I don't know if they've changed that part of the stance.
But this is the weird thing. I mean, Mormonism does believe in the whole like Garden of Eden thing, which is in Jackson County, Missouri. That's another discussion, by the way. And of course, all the biblical stories, but they also kind of accept, like, a lot of them kind of accept evolution. So if you accept evolution, accept that Homo sapiens as a species started in Africa, and you know that skin color is a function of basically how much sunlight your ancestors got over time, doesn't that mean we all have at least 1 drop of Black skin?
Yeah, but, the church, you know how it is. The church doesn't accept facts that don't fit their narrative. They change. They ignore any fact that doesn't fit.
Christians believe that tigers, lions, and leopards, and cheetahs, and all panthers all came from one single animal that Noah brought onto the ark. Or, 2, the male and female. And somehow, over 4,000 years, hyper-evolved from that to be what we have now.
Yeah, but I don't think most Christian religions, even the fundamentalists that you're talking about, have this dichotomy where you have to accept these things, but you can also accept evolution. And it's like most Mormons will put these in 2 different compartments, like this is church facts, and this is facts.
Yeah. Or in the case of some of my family members, I've heard some family members say that Adam and Eve existed in the Garden of Eden, and it was in a contained area.
In Jackson County, Missouri.
In Jackson County, Missouri. But the thing is that dinosaurs existed at the same time as them, just not in the Garden of Eden.
Well, what did they do to get kicked out of the garden?
Dinosaurs still exist. We call them birds. But
that's how my family compartmentalizes the evolution, and the thing is, they're like, well, while everything was peaceful in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve and some of the animals, the world outside of the Garden of Eden was full of violence and evolution and this and that and the other, but evolution didn't happen in the garden.
Evolution didn't happen in the garden. Okay.
That's because Satan is responsible for evolution.
Yeah, it's so wild to hear these theories.
Sorry.
But yeah, they were like, and like I said, I've heard all 3 rumors. I'm more likely to and inclined to believe, because Mormons are so into their sports, their college sports, that the other teams refusing to play with them is probably what sent their decision to allow Blacks to have the priesthood over the edge.
Yes, Spencer W. Kimball, the prophet when I was born, suddenly had a revelation from God that let the church not suffer the indignity of not playing against, I think it was, I don't know which team it was, and I would need to do more research to find out which version is correct. Because usually when anything like this happens in the church, it usually has to do with the revenue the church is getting in some way.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the thing is that if you can't play sports, which sports is an extremely huge thing in our society, if you can't play sports, then you're not going to want to go to that college.
Well, if you can't have sex or alcohol,
go to that college, you're not going to.
Hey, wait. I need to go back to something Alana said.
If you can't have sex or alcohol,
as long as you're married.
Yeah, but if you're in college and you can't have sex and alcohol because you're not married, I think I would get into sports too.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is that it's like, okay, so if your sports team is defunct, nobody's gonna want to go to your college.
Yep.
They're not gonna pay the money, and so they're not. So basically, you're gonna lose revenue. So yes, revenue did have a little bit to do with that.
It looks like in 1974, there was a protest by the Boy Scouts because the troops sponsored by the churches of Mormons, the black kids in those troops were not allowed to become leaders of Boy Scout troops.
Now, the Mormon Boy Scouts is another topic. They are no longer affiliated. The Boy Scouts are no longer affiliated with the church.
Which is a good thing.
But that was another one of their policies. You know, you could be a black Boy Scout, but you can't lead the Boy Scouts because you're black.
Well, that's also another aspect of, in the Mormon church, we have callings, which is basically like your volunteer job for the church. And you have to hold the priesthood to hold certain callings. Boy Scout leader is a calling, and you have to have the priesthood in order to be a Boy Scout leader.
Well, you know, go ahead.
There's nothing creepy. Well, I was going to say Boy Scout leader might be fun, but I was going to say you have to wonder about the people who want to be Boy Scout leaders sometimes.
Sometimes, but other times I understand it, especially people who have teenage boys, because it just...
Yeah, because then you can get involved in your kids' lives a little bit more and a little bit easier.
But one thing you mentioned about, you know, it being a ministry or a blessing to do. Calling. And Telltale's mentioned it before also, you know, in certain churches they'll say, you know, it's a blessing to do this and this for the church, and you have to be privileged to be able to do it.
Okay.
And it reminds me more and more of the old story from Huckleberry Finn or Tom Sawyer, where he convinced everyone it was a blessing to paint the fence for him, and to the point where they paid him to have the privilege of whitewashing the fence.
That's about right. That sums up Mormonism.
It's a blessing to clean the church, you know, something we would pay people to do, but you're going to pay us your tithes to then come clean the church.
Same with missionary work. You have to pay to go on your mission, even though it's complete servitude to the church.
Yeah. Well, they do pay some of it now because they made everyone pay the same amount. But it's like if you listen to like the stories of the Osmonds, like when they started singing, they had to save up for the mission. It's like, why save up for your mission? College is a much better experience.
Yeah, well, the thing is that they start programming you to do certain things in nursery, so I can kind of... It's like, it's really hard to break free of that thought process because they don't really give you a chance to learn otherwise.
Give, said the little stream.
Yeah.
The Osmonds were Mormon?
Yes, Gentile, the Osmonds were Mormon.
So I found also that in 1969, there was a vote to overturn the priesthood ban, and it passed. However, at the time, there was the head senior apostle, Howard B. Lee. He was out of town because of traveling. So when he came back, he said, hey, right, we're going to do another vote. And in the vote where he was present, it did not pass.
Well, okay, when you're president of the church, now they will tell you that everybody's in agreement and they all sit together and they counsel. But the president of the church is actually an authoritarian who can pretty much say, nope, I outrank you. I speak directly to God. Guess what? That's not going to fly. You can kind of see this with the Mormon versus not calling us Mormons versus not calling us Mormons debate.
All right,
Church of Latter-day Saints of Jesus Christ?
The full name of the church is the full name of the church is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they don't want you to shorthand it anymore.
Yeah, screw that.
Yeah, not going to do that for multiple reasons, which I've kind of addressed in other areas.
Well, what's easier to say? You could abbreviate to COJCOLDS, or you can use the name everyone's used for almost 200 years now, Mormon.
LDS is also a fairly common shorthand But a lot of people tend to avoid that one because when you say LDS, somebody will be like, "You mean LSD?"
I was just thinking how many times it would be easy to accidentally mix those two up when you're talking about the church.
Yeah.
Star Trek 4 makes that joke.
Do they?
Yes.
Well, another thing I found was that in the 60s and 70s, before the 60s and 70s, a lot of the belief was that the priesthood ban was from John Smith. And after
Joseph Smith.
Joseph Smith. John Joseph, does it make a difference?
Yes. Yes, it does.
I know. Joseph Smith, during the 60s and 70s, there was a research put into it with some scholars, and they found that the bans started after John Smith, so it's easier for Joseph. Sorry, I'm not trying to be this. Well,
he's kind of the founder of the religion. It's kind of important to get his name right.
Joseph Smith. That happened after Joseph Smith, so it was easier for, was his name Kimball, to say, yeah, it's no longer the thing.
Well, a living prophet is more important than a dead one, because one of these days we're going to have to go over the most cultish piece of writing I've ever seen, and I'm not calling the church a cult, because I don't think it has been since 1890, and we'll get over the reasons for that later. But
I disagree with you on that, but that can be a friendly discussion for another time.
I just don't think it quite fits the definition of a dangerous religious group. Unless, of course, you happen to be LGBT.
Okay, so when the stuff you gave me, they said that the overturning was called the Official Declaration 2.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So for 100 and something years, they had nothing to say between Official Declaration 1 and 2?
Well, Official Declaration 1 is just the church telling people, it's like,
can y'all stop with the polygamy? We told you to stop.
Not doing polygamy. We're officially not doing polygamy anymore.
Yeah.
And it took another 100 and something years to come up with another declaration.
Well, they haven't come up with any other declarations.
Wait. There's 3 official declarations.
What's the third one? Family Proclamation is not official canon.
Yeah, that's not a... But there's not just one where the prophet has some kind of like LSD fever dream. That's Official Declaration 2. And Official Declaration 3 should be the one about blacks in the priesthood, I think.
No, Declaration 3 is marriage for all.
Okay.
Or at least that's the discussion. And that's based in the future. That's a parody. Official 2 is...
I was about to say.
Don't go to the Salamander Society.
Official 2 is the one that allowed blacks to become part of the priesthood.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't put it again. I wouldn't put it past somebody though to say, "Oh no, we shouldn't have put that in there and take it out." So
there's also one that just says the people who died before Christ came back got resurrected. It's not a big deal.
It would be if you died before Christ.
Well, the church has this whole baptism for the dead thing, and we are going to do an episode on that.
I've heard a little about that.
Yeah, that is something that practically all Mormons do.
And when I first heard baptism of the dead, I've had very different thoughts about what it was until it was explained to me.
I prefer the Discordian version someone came up with, which actually involves digging up corpses.
Oh, jeez. But anyway, one of the things that I also wanted to bring up was a little while back, right around the time where the church did their, I think it was like a 30-year celebration last year of, yay, we allowed blacks to have the priesthood. Right before that, somebody came up with a hoax letter that looked super official from the Mormon, and looked like it was from the Mormon church, that said, hey, we were wrong for not allowing blacks to have the priesthood, and we're really, really sorry.
Oh, no.
And a bunch of people were celebrating, and they were like, I didn't know I needed this. I didn't know I needed this validation. I didn't, it was like, yes, the church is finally like owning up and taking accountability for what it's done. And then the person who wrote the letter came back and said, no, I did it as a hoax because I wanted to show how much hurt that this caused. And it's like, you didn't need to put Black people's hopes up.
Yeah.
That was really
That
crap.
would hurt.
Well, I don't.
And the church does not apologize. It does not take accountability. It will retract and disavow, but it will never, ever take accountability for what it's done.
Well, some of its current elders have at one point apologized for the BYU electroshock aversion therapy thing, which is another episode in itself.
I didn't know that.
That was shocking.
That was not an official statement.
Yeah, that's part of the problem, is that individuals will sometimes apologize if they think that it won't catch wind, like it won't get, and it won't become well-known knowledge. But the church itself never apologizes. It basically just retracts and says, oh, people don't like this, and this is apparently bad, so let's change gears. And they never state that they caused harm, and they never accept that they have caused harm.
And someone really just needs to get rid of the little factory speech.
Actually, that, I believe, has been taken off of the Mormon website.
Factory speech?
People are going to make that live forever.
Yeah, but officially, the church pulled it from their website.
You'll want to Google this.
Like never happened. That's what the church prefers to do. If they can get away with, oh, we never taught that, that's what they will do.
Yes, we're going to have to talk about this.
Please, no.
I just read like 2 lines of it so far. Yes.
Utah Outcast, if you ever see that little factory speech is one you might want to cover. Because I'd love to see Felicia's hand gestures on that one.
I would love to see Felicia's reactions, period, to that one.
Who's Felicia?
Felicia is on Utah Outcasts.
Okay.
Yeah. She's awesome. I like Felicia. But yeah, basically with anything, like the only reason why the church released this statement about Blacks in the priesthood was because they basically had to, and they had to fess up in order to try to stop the bleeding of membership, because that was one of many things that the church has never been completely honest with, and it's still kind of putting a PR spin on it.
Actually, that's kind of a common thing with ex-Mormons, though. They'll find out, like, you're told all your life, it's like, either Joseph Smith was a prophet of God and he was the biggest fraud who ever lived. And, like, at one point I was starting to question some things, and I thought, well, because the truth should withstand scrutiny, why don't I look at some of these actual historical sources and see what they have to say?
Yeah, I know more as an ex-Mormon than I did as a full-time believing member. And when I was a Mormon, I was all in. My entire life was dedicated to the church.
As an ex-Baptist, I can say I now know more about the Bible, how it was put together, than I did when I was in the church.
And encouraging that kind of black and white thinking, first of all, it genders anger, because the church presents itself as the only source of capital T truth in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And you find out you're being lied to. It's like these larger-than-life figures that were representatives of God. Maybe this was just me, though.
No, I had a lot of anger after church myself, after I came out and found out that, and had to struggle with how many people were teaching me stuff they believed was wrong. They knew it wasn't real, but they still went with it.
Finding out Joseph Smith was a child rapist and Brigham Young was, well, everything Brigham Young was.
One of the most violent men to ever live. Yeah. And racist.
Racist, sexist, misogynist.
It sounds like God in the Old Testament.
He was very Abrahamic. He
Well,
was
Brigham,
very much an eye for an eye. In fact, one of Brigham Young's favorite things was these are sins I really don't like, and penalty for these particular sins is death.
because it's the only way to it's the only way to achieve forgiveness is to shed the sinner's blood. And that leads into groups like the Danites, but the church's racism may have started with Brigham Young, but it hasn't stopped there. I mean,
No, it hasn't.
until 1980. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, Lara. Go ahead and finish.
I'm just as bad with it. Until 1982, and I had a Book of Mormon that said this myself, the Book of Mormon actually said that if the Native Americans were righteous, their skin would become white and delightsome.
Yes,
I've heard
actually,
that
I
one.
still have my Book of Mormon that was printed around that time period. And it's actually still kind of in there.
I was going to say, the new wording isn't much better.
The new wording isn't much better. And also, the thing is that they gloss over it. Like, it's in there, but they don't teach that particular lesson anymore because it looks bad. But it's still in the book.
I'm sure Christian churches don't teach the talking donkeys story that's in what?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Balaam.
I'm not saying that Mormonism is the only one that does that. I'm just saying it's still in there. They just act like it's not because bringing it up is not a good idea.
But can I point out how harmful that it can be to someone? I mean, as a kid in a church I grew up, you were truly saved if you spoke in tongues. And do y'all know what speaking in tongues is?
Das kommt mir Spanish for.
It's what?
What I said was German. It had nothing to do.
Okay. So they were speaking in tongues, and there was also what's called being slain in the spirit, where you've probably seen it in YouTube clips where a priest comes up and touches you in your head, and you fall over backwards. Well, that I had to fake speaking in tongues, and I was never slain in spirit except once, where I made myself do it. And I spent most of my childhood and teenage years wondering how screwed up I was that God would not give me the same thing everyone else had. Mm-hmm. And here you are telling people, especially kids looking at the Bible or the Book of Mormon, saying, oh, well, if you're really righteous, your skin will turn white. And
that's
being told...
No, it becomes pure now.
Become pure, but back then it was white. And you could do as good as you possibly could do, and it never would change. And you would be thinking, what else have I done, God, that I can't?
Yeah, it's
like this video on your channel.
They it is I have actually heard, because unfortunately I have family members who are Sunday school teachers, and I have heard them trying to tell kids of color that, oh, no, that's not in effect anymore and it's all okay. And it's like, you can say that, but the book that they're told is the most correct book in the world, and that the book that's the most righteous book in the world says differently. They're not going to listen to you tell them that it's all okay, because it's not okay. It's not right. It's not okay. And you just trying to reassure them isn't going to fix the problem.
Well, they're not going to gloss over it because it was Joseph Smith, even though the church has corrected this book hundreds of times. It's like you can go through, actually, I think it's the Utah Lighthouse Ministry has a list of corrections. And normally I would not recommend a Christian site, but this is known for its scholarship. They're also the people who basically told the church, it's like, we think the Salamander letter is a forgery.
Yeah.
And again, that's an episode in itself.
And I also found the links for a lot of the original stuff too. So I'll be sending that to both of you when I get a chance. It's not got everything, but there's stuff like the Journal of Discourses, the original 1830 version of the Book of Mormon, all kinds of different stuff. So I'll be sending that to y'all. But it kind of, that was one of the first things where I realized how deeply embedded the racism was, and it made me really angry that I had been taught that, and not only that, that I was crappy enough of a person to just take it at face value.
Well, for a 19th century religion founded in the Americas, the racism is at least historically understandable.
It is, but the lack of apologies, the lack of taking accountability for it, the whitewashing, and the continuing of they don't teach it outright, but you still hear it depending on where you're, because I've said something similar. I don't remember when, but it's like what you hear in Sunday school is sometimes different from what you hear in the hallways from the older priesthood holders.
Yeah.
Sorry, the one thing I always remember about that is, they get to discussing polygamy eventually, and all the guys would have like the look on their face like, those were the good old days, and then you'd see their wives just glaring at them.
Yeah. And that's part of it is the church has no remorse for the bullshit that they've done. And I think that hurts even more than what it was founded on, is that there's no remorse there. And I think that causes more damage than the actual history does.
Well, they're also getting to a point that the Catholic Church was long ago where they can't deny their history anymore. Mm-hmm. It's like they can't say Joseph Smith wasn't convicted of gold digging because he was.
Yeah.
They can't say the church wasn't racist because there's a clearly documented history.
Yes.
I would also love to know how the church has been racist against Asian people, but I don't think there's anything about that because I think Asian people have always been allowed to hold the priesthood.
According to what some of the articles you sent me, yeah, they were. And black people from other countries, not Africa, at some point were, as well as considered.
It gets very convoluted. It's nothing in Mormonism is consistent. And if you take 5 minutes to just look at all the inconsistencies,
except their hatred of gay people.
People tend to be like, why was I following this? And that's actually why the church is bleeding so many members right now, is because the inconsistencies are not adding up.
Because my Pennsylvania Dutch dad thought, like the idea of a heavenly mother. And one of these days, if I can get up enough courage, I want to ask him, it's like, Dad, did you know there was Wicca? Which also has this idea?
Yeah. That's actually something that I plan on tackling on my own channel, is the Heavenly Mother thing. Because it's basically, to sum it up, it's basically, oh, you have a mother in heaven. We're so progressive because we believe that you have a mother in heaven who loves you. But that's not progressive.
Here's the thing. Given Mormon doctrine, we all have a mother in heaven. We don't know if we have the same mother in heaven. We could all have 3 different heavenly mothers.
Yeah. That's
because
the
God's
reason
a polygamist.
That's the reason why they don't go into it, is it's because they'd have to discuss polygamy, which again they tried to avoid because that was a terrible part of Mormon history.
Why? It's still doctrine. They haven't changed that.
It's doctrine, but it's a dichotomy of, well, it's doctrine, but because we don't want to be associated with people like Warren Jeffs in our history, we act like we don't practice it anymore, even though if you think about it, it's like, well, no, you're not allowed to practice it in life, but in death, it's still in effect. So yes,
it's required.
Still believes in polygamy.
You cannot get into the celestial kingdom unless
you are a polygamist.
You are polygamous.
Oh yeah, it's still doctrine.
Specifically.
But they try to hide it behind, oh, well, we don't practice it anymore.
For example, we all couldn't get married and get into the celestial kingdom.
Who?
If we all 3 got married to each other, we couldn't get into the celestial kingdom.
Oh, darn.
But if we brought in Mr. Atheist, we'd be good.
Well, I'm not saying so much darn still. He's not that bad looking.
But that's the thing, and that's what.
I hope this dream doesn't get back to him.
It's basically we don't teach this anymore, but it's like, oh, but it's you don't teach it, but that doesn't mean it's not doctrine anymore.
Well,
You're trying to hide it away and not admit it.
There's always the expectation that polygamy is going to be legal again.
The thing is that I have mixed feelings about that, because I want for people who are in polyamorous relationships to be able to have legal protections for their relationships, because there are some things that you only get through marriage. Unfortunately, with our system is set up, I want them to have that ability, but I don't want the Mormon Church within 100 miles of it.
Polygamy can be practiced ethically. There are fundamentalist
polygamous
groups.
Are we talking about polygamy, which is only men with multiple?
Specifically.
Yeah, and also I'm also for polyandry as well. It's just, the thing is that, like I said, I have such mixed feelings, because I want people who are in polyamorous relationships to be able to get married if they want to, but I don't want Mormonism to have the ability to practice it their way, because their way is horrible and shitty.
There are fundamentalist groups who have established guidelines for ethical polygamy. It's like always consensual, always over 18. And then there are groups like the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, led by, may he go to outer darkness forever, Warren Jeffs.
Yes. And that's why I said I had mixed feelings, is because there needs to be a way to do it in a way that the people who are doing it legitimately and who are doing it in a way that makes people happy are able to do so. But the people who are abusive do not have loopholes to continue their abuse.
It's like the kind of person I'm kind of dating right now is surprised I'm okay with polyamory and don't like polygamy. I'm like, I just had to say, it's like, I'm an ex-Mormon. It's like, you're not going to understand this baggage unless you've been there.
Yeah, and it is serious baggage. Stuff like, again, going back to Brigham Young, this is not an exact quote, but this is what he meant. He basically said, I think no more of taking a wife than I do of buying livestock.
He had over 50 wives, so yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. So, like I said, that's a mixed bag for me. And also why I personally cannot participate in polyamory, because of my background. Even though I think it might be beneficial to me in some ways, I just can't because of the baggage.
I have to wonder
back to 1978.
Yeah, 1978.
We're pandering everywhere.
So do y'all think the church is fully accepting of black people now?
No.
But
no.
But
it's led by a bunch of racist old white guys.
That book on a story y'all had me read, the priesthood and black people, they said it was all good now.
Is that from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints from their Sunday school manuals?
Yeah, but it says it's all good now.
No, it's not. For instance, again, going back to my family, I have family members who have told me that it's okay for black people to marry black people. It's okay for white people to marry white people. But if you are a white person marrying a black person, that's a sin.
Malt liquor, 40s, and miscegenation.
Yeah, like I remember. I also, and again, we're talking about, and again, Book of Mormon. That whole storyline has been reworded to sound prettier, but it's still the same storyline in the Book of Mormon. The Native Americans had it coming because they were iniquitous.
Because Laman and Lemuel were rebelled against God and wouldn't listen to their, let's be honest, kind of a dick brother Nephi.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
they've never retracted any statements by Brigham Young. They just sweep them under the rug, where Brigham Young said that you can get to the celestial kingdom, but as a servant, not as a a fully fledged member of society, essentially.
Yeah, you can't marry, you can't. You'll get to the lowest level, but you'll never get to the highest level, so you can't attain what the Mormons call exaltation.
They haven't said sorry for their racist history.
They've just changed white to pure.
Yeah, they had a celebration that said, "Hey, let's celebrate when we decided to let blacks have the priesthood." And then anybody who was criticized, who was a person of color, who criticized and said this is tone deaf and you shouldn't be doing it, basically got, I wouldn't say physically attacked, but definitely verbally attacked for any criticism that they laid against that particular celebration.
Well, you're not allowed to speak ill of the Lord's annoying.
That is true.
Anointed, not annoying.
Well, they're both the same.
Annoying works. And the B1 celebration, if you watch it, they basically use the black community to make themselves look good.
What did you call it? The B1 celebration?
The B1 celebration, yeah. The church has formed an alliance with the NAACP, which is basically all PR. It's basically, oh, we want to look good, and if we say that we're doing things a certain way with the NAACP, then it's all good. People will like us. And it's like, but that doesn't change any of the stuff that you've done.
The fact that you won't apologize for it.
Yeah, the fact that you won't apologize for it. No, it's not all good in the neighborhood. It's they're covering up, they're hiding, they're telling the truth when they absolutely have to, and when they do, they spin it to make it sound pretty.
And saying, "Oh, we're going to be slightly less prickish to black people," doesn't mean you're still not being pricks to black people.
And the thing is that I live in an area that has a lot of Cambodian, Vietnamese, and I'm trying to remember, Koreans. We have full wards here that have an entire breadth of Asian communities. And most of them are headed by white bishoprics, like the bishop,
usually from Utah,
the pastor, and his two counselors. Basically they put white people in charge.
But that's not what this policy says.
Yeah,
well, they have no other choice because there are no white people in the congregation. A non-white person will lead it. But basically, if someone from Utah comes out, like I grew up in Pennsylvania, so I'm one of the weirdest combinations of Mormon you'll find. Pennsylvania Dutch ex-Mormon.
How did you not become Amish?
Because my ancestors were Mennonites. Like Paulogia, I'm descended from Swiss Mennonites, but my ancestors went to Pennsylvania, not Ontario.
And I mean, and my area, like my very local area, has an exception. There is somebody who is Cambodian who is a bishop here over in a mostly white ward, but I think that they did that because and wards are what we call our congregations.
Okay.
Well, there's
and
branches, wards, stakes.
Yeah.
And then
my ward, my congregation does have a Cambodian bishop, but he is richer than a lot of the other people, and two, a lot of basically my ward is super tiny and everybody is leaving it. So it was kind of the, oh, well, he's willing to do it, so we pick him. I think if they had a different choice, they would have put somebody else in charge.
Yeah, and they've really got to stop the policy of, I mean, it wasn't in place was I there, but I didn't do them, of like, except for priesthood interviews when I was going up and like for baptism, of going in alone with the bishop as a teenager and having the bishop ask you, and keep in mind, bishop has no training as a clergyman.
No training, and he basically goes by his gut. So if he is a hateful prick, he pretty much has free reign to be a hateful prick because his gut feeling is what he's supposed to go with.
And they'll ask you about the topic in the little factory pamphlet that Alanis is probably going to read and laugh at hilariously, but off camera because she will be laughing her ass off.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, in this area, pretty much they only pick somebody who is of Asian descent if they have nobody else that they can call on to be bishop or pastor, which is ludicrous to me, especially in wards where you have a higher concentration of people of color.
Can we get Matt Powell to be a Mormon bishop?
That's a frightening thought.
Matt Powell, is that Rationality Rules?
That's Stephen Woodford. Matt Powell is... What was that movie with the Raging Atheist?
I don't remember. But
yeah. Matt Powell is that young preacher, isn't he?
He's not a preacher. He's a computer scientist. And Matt, from one person with a computer science degree to another, don't preach. Code. Please.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, basically the Mormon Church's policy is nothing to see here, move along. And if you start seeing the problems and the cracks, they tell you it's your fault because you're not faithful enough.
Or you're being influenced by Satan. Because doubts are from Satan.
That is something that happens even in the other.
I think the biggest difference is I see things on a sliding scale. Like a lot of what the Mormon Church does isn't unique, but the Mormon Church takes certain aspects of that to a bigger extreme than general mainstream Christianity does at times on some things.
Well,
you
also
looking at it individually, like there are some things where it's like, yeah, other churches do it, but not as badly as the Mormon Church does. And some things the Mormon Church does is like, that's about the same as everybody else. So that's a moot point.
And some things are just weird because Mormonism's weird.
I haven't been to a bunch of different Christian churches, but I've been to Abundant Life, Baptist, and a couple other denominations. And one thing I can see the difference between them and Mormonism and Jehovah's Witness is the amount of structure built into the...
Oh, they're both authoritarian.
Yeah.
The Jehovah's Witnesses and like, I will watch someone talk about Mormonism, and like you'll mention something, and right away, Trey Taylor, you will nod your head because it's the same there as it is somewhere else. Whereas in a lot of Christian churches, there is no... I couldn't tell you when I was a Baptist who was the head of the Baptist Association.
Which one?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you who was in charge of this or that. It just wasn't something that was pushed out. We didn't really care who was the head of everything. Yeah. We were just independent.
The Mormon Church is so structured that you are assigned what building you go to and what time you're supposed to show up and who your pastor is.
Who your bishop is.
You get to choose. You show up when they tell you to, and if you don't like that, then you need to move to a location that you do like.
Well,
like,
if you
simply move from your house to another house and go to that. That's what the official stance is.
Yeah, we'll have to do another episode on the love bombing that does, and maybe, well, I don't want to bring Telltale in because Telltale kind of...
I would...
You cut out, but...
I didn't cut out. I just forgot where I was going. I just don't like where he stands on the rationality rules thing, even though I understand.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I really don't want to bring Telltale in. that's a personal thing with me.
The best thing he could have done was remain silent.
Yeah.
Which is what Mr. Atheist did.
But
or he could have gotten angry and chewed out Kyle Curtis for trying to. No, wait, that's what I did. It's like, and I know he'll never.
Anyway, 1978.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, now a thing that I've dealt with, and again, I'm referencing family members because I have family members who are around dead, is they actually remember what the church was like before then, before 1978, and they remember like the actual announcement, and they remember the changes that were made afterwards.
And the church? Sorry, go ahead.
Something I commonly hear from all of them is the church was never racist. God was.
Bullshit. Bullshit.
Oh yeah, it's bullshit. I don't believe.
Oh, the church wasn't racist. I was the racist one.
God was racist, and then God decided to change his mind.
Well, a prophet is only a prophet when speaking as a prophet.
But yes. How do you determine when the prophet's preaching as the prophet?
There's no guideline on that.
You're not supposed to. You're supposed to follow regardless of whether or not the prophet is wrong.
It's like
if you follow when the prophet is wrong, then you don't get judgment. But if you don't follow the prophet, then you do get God's judgment upon you.
Well, now
or anyone higher in the church than you.
Here's a question I have about the 1978 policy. With the churches I've gone to, again, like I said, there was a higher authority, but they were rarely ever mentioned, and they didn't pass down edicts. And if something like that had come down, and one of the, I'm not old enough, but if I'd been in one of those churches back then and they had a policy like that, and it had come down, you would have people in a congregation stand up and argue against it and leave. Do you think that kind of thing happened in the Mormon churches?
At the beginning, it did happen, but dissent is strongly discouraged. It's like when someone gets called, you're asked to it's like if you affirm this person to the calling, raise your right arm. That's my left arm. Right arm to the square.
Yeah. You're
and
basically
no one ever, when they're given the opportunity to just oppose it in some way, almost no one ever does.
Yeah, because it looks bad if you do. Basically, and again, I'm referencing family members and personal experiences, but that's all I really have. A lot of people just left the church because they couldn't believe that the church had changed that particular doctrine. And it does happen a lot. People left over the LGBTQ plus policy that kids of gay parents can't be baptized. A lot of people
just downright evil.
It is downright, but that's the thing.
Hold on, we need to do something.
When the church makes changes, people leave, and sometimes they leave, and most of the time they leave quietly because they've been trained not to make a fuss.
Now, you said they left the church. Was it because they no longer believed in the church, or did
they still believe the stuff? They just started new fundamentalist groups.
It didn't like, hey, this is a big change. There's no way God would do something like this. Crap, there's something wrong. There's something wrong with this religion. I need to reevaluate my life.
What happens?
Happen, but sometimes it's I need to reevaluate my life, and sometimes it's this is not what I was taught. They've lost it. They're not talking.
The church was true, but they've gone off course.
I'm the new prophet, and I'm starting my own branch of the church.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This branch is apostate.
That's basically what's his name from the NIFB basically did. Steve Anderson.
Speaking of which, there's something I want to do just because the NIFB charter allows it. I am naming Alanis's channel with Alanis's pastor of the NIFB reprobate branch. Dare to kick us out. Share that on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm expecting that and it happens basically with every major change, this is not what I was taught, and so therefore I'm out. I left for a different reason than that, but I stayed out because I found out how many changes were there, how many inconsistencies were there, all of the terrible doctrines that were taught, never addressed, never apologized for. So I mean, you can leave for different reasons, same as any other church,
Mm-hmm.
but when you leave, sometimes it feels more extreme
Oh yeah, we
because
have to. Sorry.
because the church tries to completely overtake your life, and they will if you let them.
We'll have to do a story on just how difficult it is to leave the Mormon Church officially. I mean, most churches just, if you stop going after a
I
while.
went through that because I resigned. I resigned recently.
Yeah, I got the letter from Greg Dodge. I still save it somewhere.
That would be a great episode. I could ask y'all questions because I could tell you when I left the church, I just basically stopped showing up and was never questioned about it. Never.
Having to threaten legal action against your ward and your bishop is not a normal process for getting your name off the rolls.
Well, and also, and it's also what we call leadership roulette. Some bishops will be like, you know what, you're too much of a nuisance, I'm letting you go, or I don't want people in my ward that don't actually want to be here. And some of them will hunt you down and track you down and be like, you need your ass back in church.
They'll do love bombing.
We're about to hit the 90-minute mark, so
yeah. And
any final statements y'all want to make?
Show up every other Saturday for the NFIB Reprobate Branch Sermon, or whatever. What are they called? Just parishes?
Wards. I don't know.
No, not for the Mormons, for the NIFB.
So try to tell. Do you have any videos coming up?
I'm associated with the NFB even as a joke.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So,
sorry. I'm just the type of person who would want to piss them off. So.
I understand that. I just don't want my name attached, even for giggles.
Okay. So, tell. Do you have any videos coming up?
Yes. The Mormon Church basically will not has tried to sweep everything out under the rug, has tried to make everything sound pretty, has tried to distract and say nothing to see here, and has never, ever, ever accepted a responsibility for its harmful teachings towards people of color. It's never, ever admitted. It's admitted that it's wrong, but just saying, hey, we don't do that anymore is not enough. And it really, really, really needs to step up and say, hey, these were things that we did. We shouldn't have done them, and we're sorry for them.
Just one thing I want to add, it's like, yes, we're being critical, but the church has made improvements. No organization is the same.
Oh no, it has made improvements. It's not terrible. It's just when you've done something hurtful and you don't even acknowledge that it was hurtful to people, that is a...
So, do you think the third episode is going to be the little factory? God, I don't even want to deal with that.
Do you have any videos coming up, Tritel?
Yeah, I am actually working on putting everything together. There was a survey put out last month that said that they were thinking about decreasing the age for bishop interviews. I am going to be doing 1 or 2 videos on that to try to tackle that because they shouldn't be asking teenagers some of these questions. Hell, they shouldn't be asking adults. But they're talking about lowering the age from 12 years old to starting interviewing children alone in the bishop's office with just one person who hasn't been trained. They're talking about lowering the age to 8 years old.
Well, they'll have a lot less to talk about.
And the Mormon Church does have a high abuse rate.
Yeah.
It does. So that is something that I'm covering. Hopefully that will be out by the end of the month, if not the very beginning of next month, because it takes me a while to do video, especially one that I need to make sure that I have everything pulled together.
And Laura, do you have any videos coming up?
Lara,
I'm sorry, Lara.
So she's trying to figure out what her new schedule. Well, she knows what her schedule is going to be, but she doesn't know how the videos are going to work. She wants to do one basically just encouraging people to vote no matter, basically, the next election, vote for whoever isn't Trump is
Yeah.
going to be the point of it, because it's like, I have to be careful about getting into arguments, but I don't want Elizabeth Warren and I don't want Joe Biden. But if they're the candidate, they're still not Trump.
Okay. And I am working on, if you're a fundamentalist my age, you probably got exposed to a bunch of movies called the Left Behind series. Not the Left Behind
Oh, good God.
Not the Left Behind series. The previous. That's more of the late 90s, early 2000s. Before that, it was the Thief in the Night series. And they were filmed in the 70s. And basically, there were movies that said, if you're not Christian, you'll be left behind during the rapture, and you'll be hunted down and killed. Now, let's watch these, kids. And so I'm trying to make a video about that.
Oof.
Cheesy 70s singing, 70s haircut, and existential horror all mixed in.
So it's like Logan's Run without the moralizing?
Well, there's a lot of moralizing, just...
I mean, without any real moralizing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Have fun with that.
All right.
But thank you all for coming. And
do you have any particular sign-out, Alanis? Because I need to stop recording.
Y'all have a great day.
And so long, and thanks for all the fish.
Catch y'all on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, we're no